I'd like to introduce Mr. Lenny Lipton.
Well, I have a belt.
Lenny is graduated from Cornell University, where he majored in physics, and he founded the Stereographics company in 1980, which he later sold to Real D in 2004, where he is now the Chief Technology Officer. So, Lenny?
Oh, thank you. So thank you, Chris. My intention is to give us an overview of stereoscopic cinema technology to provide some kind of a context historically to understand where we are today, and I'll talk about some of the technology issues. And inevitably, because it's stereoscopic cinema, it's linked to business. This chart, which is one of my busiest PowerPoint charts, talks about major technology innovations. I'm not going to read all of that or talk about it. The most interesting thing on the chart to me at this moment in time is we talk here about the introduction of the cinema itself and sound and widescreen and color. Color is the only innovation that required no change in the theaters. So you just had to have a print and put it on the projector, and it worked just fine. Everything else requires an investment on the part of the exhibitors and the studios. So widescreen took a bigger screen, sound, theaters had to be wired for sound and so forth and so on. And we're seeing that the introduction of the stereoscopic cinema obviously requires some kind of an investment. One of the things that I'm very interested in is practical products that have good performance and are repeatable and dependable. As long as you've got two machines, that's not always true, but as long as you have two machines in the booth now, 1927, the Vitaphone system was introduced. There had been sound on film systems since 1922 by Lee DeForest, but for whatever reasons, Western Electric and Warner Brothers got together and made a deal for Vitaphone, which used 33 1/3 records. They weren't LPs, and they were mechanically synchronized. You can see these two guys here. They're obviously not projectionists. This must be because they've got nice three-piece suits on. This system didn't last for very long, but it did get the sound cinema started. And in many ways, the stereoscopic cinema is recapitulating what happened with the sound cinema in terms of technology advancements and the creative people in the film business learning how to use it. If you take a look at a movie that was made in 1927, it's a historical artifact. If you take a look at a movie that was made in 1930, you can actually get into it as a dramatic work because there were sufficient improvements not only in the technology but also in the way the artists and the filmmakers learned how to use the medium. Cinerama is real interesting. My mom took me to see This is Cinerama at the Warner Theater, maybe it was the Criterion Theater downtown in Manhattan. Cinerama, very complicated. Cinerama, motivation for having Cinerama in the early 50s was the end of the Second World War, the rise of television, people having a lot of disposable income, and the attendance in theaters in 1948 in the United States dropped precipitously. In fact, the attendance fell in half, and people were concerned about that and tried to think of ways of turning the motion picture medium into an event so that people would come back to the movies. So I remember when I was a kid, you actually could get prizes, like they gave plates and crockery and stuff like that, but maybe a better idea is to have a good movie. Here's an idea in which you have a movie that's big. It's very big. You have three projectors, a triptych. Abel Gance did it, I believe it was 1924, in his film Napoleon. And this is an outgrowth of a aerial gunner simulator that was invented by Fred Waller. Three projectors, three projectionists, a magnetic sound playback machine, and right in the middle, right below the screen, was a command and control center. So, this obviously was an idea that took a lot of effort. It's undoubtedly the precursor of IMAX, and it's also the precursor of CinemaScope, which used a single 35mm projector. Competing with Cinerama for the event motivation for going to cinemas was the stereoscopic cinema. In 1939, in the World's Fair in Flushing Meadow Park, where I grew up in Flushing, so I was bound to become a stereographer. People realized that you could take two projectors that were required up until fairly recently in the history of the cinema for changeover. Because you had a 1,000-foot reel would run about 11 minutes, then you needed to change over. In fact, if you take a look at the upper right-hand corner of all movies today, you'll see the little changeover bug, the little thing up in the corner, which hasn't gone away. So by interlocking the two projectors, you could get them to work the way people did in the World's Fair in 1939, two projectors, and this system is the same system that's used today in theme parks, two projectors interlocked. The problem is, and the Polaroid Corporation had some of the really brilliant physicists, and Vivian is here, and she would know that Jones and Shercliffe were really first-rate physicists who were employed by Polaroid to straighten out the mess. They couldn't get these projectors to run in sync. They had terrific problems with the screens, depolarizing light. But despite their best efforts, it wasn't simply getting the projectors to run in sync. You had phase issues. The projector shutters have to be substantially in phase. You've got carbon arcs that have to be running at the same amperage, or one image is darker than the other. So this is a big problem. And what did prevail in the cinemas was CinemaScope and not Cinerama and not 3D movies. This is a very obvious principle that people have brought up yesterday and today in various talks. I apparently am the first person to enunciate it in my book, Foundations of the Stereoscopic Cinema. It seems so obvious once you say it, but stereoscopic projection, stereoscopic images in general, follow a symmetry or a congruence principle. The images have to be congruent or symmetrical in terms of geometry, illumination, and time. In other words, if one image is brighter than the other, it will produce what, for lack of better terminology, I'll call eye strain. Same thing is true for geometry if the magnification of the images isn't the same. So this is a very important principle because it wasn't guaranteed with the two projector stereo. The modern dominant digital projection system is based on my invention of the Z-screen, and Art Berman is one of my co-inventors, and I think he's here in the audience today. This is based on a communications device that was invented by Jim Ferguson, and we turned it into a stereoscopic selection device. It uses two pi cells and a polarizer, which are in optical series, and you turn the pi cells on and off, and they are quarter wave retarders. You don't turn them completely off because one of the retarders, the one that's almost off, compensates for the residual birefringence in the other one. And you get really pure circular depolarized light. And my colleagues at RealD worked out some engineering issues and turned the Z-screen, which we had been offering for about 15 years at Stereographics as a device for industrial presentations. They turned it into something that was suitable for the cinema. So you see a digital projector, its projection lens, the Z-screen, which consists of the polarizer and the two variable retarders or pi cells, liquid crystal cells. So as was pointed out in the earlier paper, it's the combination of digital or electronic technology and stereoscopy that makes the stereoscopic cinema possible, not only in terms of being able to conquer the problems of binocular symmetries, but all kinds of issues go away in terms of the entire production pipeline from creation to projection. So I say here that the Z-screen plus the DLP is the RealD cinema. And of course, RealD has competitors, has Dolby, has a creditable system, which is a super duper anaglyph, and also shutter glasses. The Dolby system is based on the Daimler Chrysler patents, which a spin-off of Daimler Chrysler, Infotech, licensed to Dolby. And you've got very sharp dip filters, unlike the traditional anaglyph. So I classify it as an anaglyph because it's a wavelength selection. There are only so many things you can do in terms of projection selection. You can have it, you can use the eclipse system, you can have polarization and you can have wavelength selection. In fact, the Z-screen is a combination of eclipse or occlusion and polarization. You could look at it either way. This is much too much information. It's a terrible PowerPoint slide, but it compares the systems that are now extant. And it's very interesting that the Dolby wavelength selection system and the shuttering glasses from New Vision or Expand are extremely similar in terms of their characteristics because they require recyclable eyewear, which is, and they don't require an aluminum coated screen for conserving polarization, which is required for the RealD system. We have, we haven't given up on the Z-screen. We've improved it. And for the world's premiere of Beowulf at the Westlake Theater just, I guess, a month and a half ago or so, we introduced something we call, you could call it a light doubler. It recovers the polarized light, which is wasted from a sheet polarizer, and it doubles the brightness. So that is a product that's being introduced this year, which will double the brightness of RealD projection. And the way it will be used initially will be for larger screens, so we'll be able to go up to 60 or 70-foot screens. Projection screen improvements are very, very important. The people who make projection screens today are going to profit from, hopefully, from the work that we've done in terms of improving primarily screen surfaces, which need a lot of help. And another thing that's coming along, that digital cinema opens up an opportunity for cinemas to have live events. Right now, the Metropolitan Opera has live events on a network, and there may be sporting events, rock and roll concerts, and the like. And we've been working on a multiplexing technique that uses a single satellite feed, which is an important component of having a successful real-time event. Rather than taking up 2 satellite feeds, you need to use just one in order to have a successful product. Today's projection is based on 24 FPS. Tomorrow, I hope we move to 30 FPS because a higher capture rate will eliminate image jitter. All motion picture systems that are captured at 24 frames a second exhibit image jitter in panning and in rapid motion, but if you go up to a higher capture rate of 30, you can get rid of it. Our rep rate is 144 FPS. It's 24 times 2 times 3. Means for content creation are synthesis from 2D, cinematography, computer generation, which is now the dominant mode, but in the past few weeks, well, actually last week, Hannah Montana was introduced as a 3D movie, which was shot with cameras. And on February 15th, you'll see the U2 concert, which is super duper. It's now in IMAX theaters, and it's going to come to 648 theaters in RealD in the United States. Digital projector deployment is obviously a gating item. The top black curve are the total number of projectors in the United States, which is about 37,000 projectors. The red curve has to do with the introduction or the deployment of digital projectors. So obviously, in order for Dolby or the shuttering glasses or RealD to work, we have to have digital projectors. And about now, there's something like 4,000 digital projectors in the world. About a quarter of them are RealD enabled. A number of things have to take place in order for the stereoscopic cinema to prevail. 3D must be painless, it must be beautiful. These are films that have been released up until now, and the U2 concert has been released in IMAX, as I say, but not in RealD. This is a list of films that are coming out in 2008 and 2009. These are feature films. There are 3 missing from the list. That would get us up to 2010. The Toy Story movies, 2 of them are going to be existing movies, are going to be released in 3D, and another one is going to be a brand new Toy Story isn't going to be in 3D. These are studios that are committed to making 3D movies, even if they haven't announced it. DreamWorks has made that announcement, and it looks like Disney is making all of its animated movies in 3D. And I can't speak for Sony, but it looks like they're going to be doing it. The aesthetic development of the medium is in the hands of the filmmakers, and they're going to learn how to use it and figure out how to use it. I can't predict the future, but I believe, I'm using big type here, that the 3D cinema is here to stay. And now I'm taking questions. Anybody have a question? Okay, I did not completely cover the topic then.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. The light doubler is I can't give you any technical details, but it's a device that will allow us to recapture all of the lost light and double the brightness on the screen. And the way our folks want to use it initially is for projection on large screens. There's a new class of DLP cinema projectors, which is significantly less expensive. They use a 0.98 inch chip as opposed to the 1.2 inch chip. And so this light doubling device becomes particularly important for those projectors because they're a little less bright. In fact, at the Westlake, we used the 0.98 chip projector to cover a 55-foot screen with 5.5-foot Lamberts. So that was for the Beowulf premiere, which was really fun. I got to walk down a red carpet. And Rob Engel was running around introducing me to people of great importance. I remember that. There he is in the back. So, you know, right, he said, Rob said that the projection was amazing, that he's never seen it projected better. I'm happy to repeat it again. Yeah.
You see any issues with viewer fatigue?
Here. Yeah.
Any issues with viewer fatigue?
No, you know, oh, you better do that. We hear occasional reports that people don't like looking at 3D movies in all systems, not just ours, but I think the vast majority of people have a good experience. In terms of the projection, I think we've more or less solved the projection issue of coordinating the two images and making them symmetrical. Also, this generation of filmmakers, like Rob Engel and Phil McNally, and Steve Schler, who did the U2 concert, the people at Photochem who did the post on the Hannah movie, they really are very, very concerned about avoiding the mistakes of the past. And I think a couple of our presenters today talked about having low values of parallax to that the least parallax will produce the best looking image. That's the way to go. So you know, it's not perfect, it's damn good. Any other questions? Yeah, Jason? Yeah, he asked, can you retrofit the light doubling technology? And the answer is yeah. It's similar to the Z screen. It's a little bit bigger and heavier. It will be, you can retrofit it to projectors. Our plan right now is not to retrofit it, but to add it to new projectors as they're put into service, especially those for big screens, because that's where it's needed the most. You know, because when you have 1,148 theaters, retrofitting all of those theaters would be a big task, and most of them are running pretty well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lenny. We're going to move on to our next presentation.